Two Queers in a Truck. And I'm Billy James Gunn, and my sidekick, Christian Cano, partner in crime, is coming up next.
Hey everyone, I'm Jim's sidekick. Welcome to Two Queers in a Truck. Hi y'all.
See you soon. Good morning, everybody. It is Two Queers in a Truck time, and we've got a guest again. Normally, our normal format is we don't usually have guests. It's just usually me bitching on 6 topics and being a big old queen. But we have an esteemed guest and an author, and we want to interview him and talk about his works and literary works. And he's a resident of New Orleans, and I'll go ahead and have him introduce himself, and that way we can kick this off. Robert, how you doing?
Hi, good morning. My name's Robert, or Bobby Fieseler. No one, basically, if you said Robert at a party, I wouldn't respond. But Robert gets paid more than Bobby, so I'm Robert on the dotted line.
Great.
And so I'm a queer journalist who covers marginalized groups. I'm also a scholar who excavates forgotten histories, focusing on the queer South more specifically. I'm gay as hell. I live in New Orleans, as you guys mentioned. My first book was a book called Tinderbox, which was about an event that happened in New Orleans. It was actually a queer tragedy called the Upstairs Lounge Fire, which was an arson fire in 1973 that claimed 32 lives at a gay bar called the Upstairs Lounge. That kicked off my whole process of getting involved in queer history and seeing the potential for queer history and memory work being acts of protest and in some ways acts of public advocacy for queer folk. So then my second book is called American Scare: Florida's Hidden Cold War on Black and Queer Lives. All nonfiction books have these really long subtitles that publishers tack on, but it's about the Florida Johns Committee, which was a McCarthy era committee that went after actually Black integrationists and queer folk. So it's 2 marginalized groups that face the same oppressor in the 50s and 60s, who were white supremacists. So anyway, that's my jam. What else could I tell you about myself? I've been with my same partner. I'm hopelessly homonormative in my love life, although I'm radical in my politics. I've been with the same partner for 20 years. I've been married for 8 years, same-sex married, and we got married on the shores of Walden Pond in Concord, Massachusetts. I'm for real.
Wow. Oof. You got bit by the love bug pretty hard there then.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And then we moved to New Orleans, and we live on a very gay street here.
Yeah.
Aren't all streets gay in New Orleans, or is that just
You'd think so. There's so many lesbians on my street. There's actually 2 head lesbians. I don't know how I don't know how the roosters all figured out who was the alpha, but they did. These bulls are definitely the head lesbians.
Well, is there a U-Haul place up the street? Sorry.
Love it.
And now the second book, American Scared, it's nonfiction or is it fiction? Okay.
They're all nonfiction. I'm journalistically trained. I'm obsessed with things that happen. I'm obsessed with real things because I find reality's more infinite, more pregnant with possibility, more unpredictable than anything we could make up. Any system we've ever devised to make order, sense, sanity can't predict what's going to happen in the real world. And so I like that reality doesn't pay attention to ideologies. And it also fronts the fact that queer folk exist just as a fact. Across time, across centuries, we're a human phenomenon. We're part of the fabric of whatever you would call human nature is.
Oh, 100%. In the McCarthyism, the premise in the book, from what I understand, is targeting the black community and the LGBT community in Florida is what the main premise or the gist of the book is.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah, so it's like there was a at the end of segregation, right when the civil rights movement is coming into being, post the Supreme Court decision Brown v. Board of Education in 54, white supremacists in the South freak out. They don't know how they're going to cling on to one more day, one more year, one more minute of segregated apartheid advantage. So they decide they're going to cling. They see the federal Red Scare, McCarthyism, anti-communism, and they hear the word and they latch onto it, and they realize this is the word they can take into Southern McCarthyism, is what it's called, or Southern anti-communism, and they can use this word, communist, this hot button word, to attack anyone they don't like that opposes the Southern way of life or the segregated rule, basically. So they at first go after black integrationists, black activists that are trying to basically create equality under the law, one system, one society in Florida, calling them communists. And when that stops working, because the NAACP has some of the finest lawyers and appellate lawyers, maybe ever, not just in the 20th century, but like the future Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall, this really amazing lawyer named Robert L. Carter, who ends up flying down from New York, which is where the NAACP Legal Defense Fund was, flying down to represent personally all of the persecuted NAACP leaders in Florida, Miami, Tallahassee, etc. And then when the Johns commit this Florida cabal, this anti-communist cabal that was going after the NAACP, when they realized they're gummed up, they've got this, and they've been promising heads on spikes, and they hadn't produced a single communist in 3 years. That's when they turned to the education system, and they're like, we're going to find a communist. And when they couldn't find one, they didn't find communists, but they found queer folk. So that's when they started going after and attacking closeted queer teachers and students, first at the University of Florida in Gainesville. Outed a bunch of them, ruined careers, expelled hundreds of students, etc. And in this basically reign of terror that was led by this one segregationist state senator who was gerrymandered basically into a multi-term office named Senator Charlie Johns. He was a state senator, and what he perpetrated as part of this cabal going after black folk and queer folk became so notorious in its state that Floridians nicknamed it the Johns Committee after him. And
how come the nut jobs always have two first names?
Right.
I don't know why.
That's true. That's so true.
The kind of dude that climbs bell towers or shoots people or whatever, they almost always have two or three first names. Like they never have a normal last name. It's like Billy Bob, Joe Bob, Michaels, or something. It's just
maybe
like,
that's segregated name recognition.
That's a lot of Florida inbreeding right there. That's what that is. That family tree goes straight up, no branches. I can tell you that.
Yeah, this guy Charlie Johns. Yeah, he was multi-generational power, and actually his grandfather had been in 1885 been part of the white group that actually ended Reconstruction in Florida and brought about, basically, they call it redemption, which is a sick Southern phrase for like basically the wild restoration of white rule and the creation of the slavery light system called segregation. And Florida created the first segregated constitution, 1885, that demanded basically two societies, including they had in the Constitution, it was written in 1885 Florida, dual school system, which said that even private schools can't be integrated. So Charlie Johns he was multi-generational white supremacist. Wow. And you're right, his first name wasn't even, he was supposed to be Charles. But then they ended up calling him. They gave him the Billy Bob Joe Bob name because it made him charming to segregationist white voters. He's just Charlie.
What inspired you to write American Scare? Is it the current goings on right now in society to compare it to that, or what drew you out to make you go back to McCarthyism?
Couple things. I was like trying to fall asleep one night, and I just had this thought many people think on their pillow, which is like, what's with Florida? You know what I mean? I mean, that's a reasonable question, I think.
Very.
What's with Florida? How did it get to be like this? How is this state of such natural wonders and beauty right? That it's the third largest state in the country. More than 1,000 people move there every day, and yet how is it this bastion of this type of poisonous politics, Tallahassee politics, that seems to have an obvious legacy in segregation, that has an obvious legacy in slavery? How is that? How is this poisonous form of politics existing in this state that supposedly loves freedom and boat rides and people on jet skis and women in bikinis and dudes in thongs? It doesn't make sense to me. It's like a schizophrenic place. So I thought
Yeah.
I got to look into that, certainly. And then the other thing I was thinking about had a lot to do with just I don't know how else to say this. Do you ever feel like marginalized groups in our society get divided and conquered? And how does that happen? How do we in the midst of even things like the George Floyd
Mhm.
protests, everyone's like, no, don't broaden the issue. It's not about the Palestinians. It's not about queer folk. This is just about what happens, how in many instances, or in reproductive rights, people are saying, don't broaden the conversation to body autonomy because that covers too many people. We're making it how we get split up, and by people don't realize a political opponent and socio-political opponent that then so easily defeats us one by one by one by one by one. And I've noticed this as a political phenomenon, and I was wondering, where did all that is that evident in history? Where does it happen? And I started looking into 50s, 60s Florida, and I was like, this is so weird. I had no idea that in Florida, basically a Red Scare, anti-black, and a lavender scare, anti-queer, happened in the same place, run by the same people at the same time. This would be really interesting to flesh out, and to sort of demonstrate maybe historically. And I wonder if there's some dotted lines to the present. I at least thought that would
Let's
showcase how basically white male leadership um, clings to power even through apparent pivots where it should have lost power. Like the
mhm.
end of segregation should have been the end of white rule in the South.
Yeah.
And we all know that hasn't happened.
No, in fact, I mean, I think from what I've seen in history, and I'm not a historian, but we talk about history and politics, especially modern politics, on these shows quite a bit,
Mm-hmm.
and understanding military tactics the way I do, the divide and conquer is absolutely one of the most effective tools. Is turning affected groups, minorities, people that don't traditionally trust the system anyway, and convincing a poor person to hate other poor people.
Right.
Just because maybe they love differently or have a different pigment of skin or whatever the differences are. They're so minute, and but I've found that hurt people, and when you have a community like the LGBT community, for example, because off camera we talked about the howdy, and the one person that objected to it was in our own community,
Yeah.
and it you would think that wouldn't happen, but as a trans person, I have found, especially in the last few years in the MAGA era, that the people that go after trans people the most are white cis gay men,
Mm.
and they have definitely been a complicit associate of the MAGA movement. That, hey, if we get the trannies, us other queers will be okay
Right.
because they're freaks and pedophiles and everything else, and so if we just lop the T off the LGBT part and just make it the LGBT movement, which is
Right.
what several queers have done, and is go after the genderqueer people, we've become, a massive target. It's the Lavender Scare 2.0, but
Mm-hmm.
specifically going after more of the trans community. But what I said when they began this 4 or 5 years ago, most intensively, to bring it back to your point, is I said, don't sleep on trans rights.
Yes.
Because just
Do
because they're
not.
coming after us today doesn't mean they're not going to use the blueprint on how they take away our rights to take away reproductive rights,
Sure.
gay marriage, same-sex marriage, all the hard-fought things we've won in the last 25 years in this century.
Right.
They're trying to find a weakness in our movement, our overall progressive movement, and a group that they can go after real hard. It's such a small minority that people are going to give up on us.
Yes.
And that's a mistake, because basically what they used against trans people, they're now using against women with reproductive rights.
Yeah.
And they're going to go after marriage equality if they haven't already. So very, 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 to your point, is exactly what is playing out right now. Now, we are up against our break, our little commercial break. So we're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be back with Bobby and talking about the American Scare after these important messages. Hey, everybody, you can catch us on your favorite audio podcast platform, Spotify, and all Apple Store, the Google machine, and whoever else does podcasts. We're on there. We broke in, and we're staying. So enjoy the Two Queers in the Truck on your favorite audio podcast platform. Thanks for listening or watching. Bye, boo. Happy ride.
Hi, this is your Pascual Mateo. I am back. Spedicare is back in 2026, and yes, my hiatus was sad, and it was caused by a bunch of, I don't know, butthurt losers. But I'm not gonna say that. Don't worry, I'm here. I'm gonna be annoying. I'm gonna say fuck fascism, and I'm gonna stand up against this shit. So please like, subscribe, enjoy my show, and let's fight against the bullshit that we continue to live with.
Hey, y'all, thanks for listening to Two Queers in a Truck. And we do broadcast on YouTube and Facebook in a video version. And we're also on all the audio platforms out there. So your favorite way to listen to your podcast. We've been doing this for a couple years, and we appreciate y'all listening. We know you have a ton of choices, even though we may be the best choice. We always appreciate our listeners, and we'll try to bring you quality in the future. Thanks for listening. As always, Christian and Jenny, we're out. Thank y'all. We are back, guys. And what parallel do you see now in American society to that 1950s Red Scare and Lavender Scare? Do you see a parallel, especially in Florida? It's as nutty now as it was then.
Right.
And why do people keep voting for that?
Well, it's wild to see. When I sold the book through to contract, like DeSantisism hadn't gotten going. With all of the so-called Don't Say Gay bill, the so-called Stop Woke Act, all the anti-trans measures, the anti-Disney push, the removal of the rainbow flag from public surfaces, which, like, the rainbow flag, people don't know that the rainbow was created by a gay activist named Gilbert Baker in 1978, and he was commissioned by Harvey Milk to create, who was the first openly gay public servant to run and hold elected office. He's thought to be, and Gilbert Baker created this not 6 months before Harvey Milk was assassinated by a former colleague, murdered. And so the symbol is actually a mechanism of lineage that ties us all the way back to this early sense of a movement. And so I was really intensively fascinated and influenced and horrified by that while I was writing my book. And I think it's very difficult. I wanted to see how did Tallahassee politics, it always seems to think like whoever the Florida strongman that exists, who always argues for like gerrymandering, spoils, what else? Manipulating the system to crown yourself king, all sorts of things like that. How did that that I saw so apparent in the sort of DeSantis um, domineering, bully personality? How did that come to be? And I realized that nothing that he was doing was original. Researching this history, that you could draw a line from the 1950s, 60s from this man who no one's ever heard of, because the greatest gift, the greatest thing that trick that Charlie John's ever pulled was convincing the state of Florida that basically he hadn't done what he'd done, which is he'd erased his own legacy because he basically didn't want everyone to realize he'd crowned himself king of the state. So utilizing a corrupt system. So basically that I saw that what Charlie John's perpetrated as a Florida politician, which is the basic Florida rule, is if you get power in Florida, you can use it to pick on anyone. That's the basic Florida rule. That's actually a quote from a former state senator named Lauren Book, who told me that. So then you can trace that dotted line to the anti-homosexual Save Our Children Anita Bryant campaign of the 1970s, and none of Anita Bryant's the Florida Orange Juice spokesperson who was bigoted against gay people that used to buy all her albums. None of her ideas were original. Then it goes to this Bush-Trask amendment in the 1980s, which was that public money shouldn't be used to support queer groups in colleges. None of their ideas were original. Then you go to the 90s and it's Jeb Bush and all the anti-gay adoption measures and things like that. None of his ideas are original. And then it goes to DeSantis, and none of DeSantis's ideas. It's just these consistent revivals where once a decade a sort of a sort of scare movement will gain a critical mass in the state of Florida, sort of swirl about and then spill out to the rest of the country in this hysterical movement that often says that basically innocent white children are about to be hurt by some sort of internal enemy who will morally corrupt them, and usually sexually corrupt them too, is the argument. And we need to get them. we need to tamp them down. And so basically studying the Johns Committee helps me understand how this very poisonous streak in Tallahassee politics, how it sort of manifests and self-manifests again and again once in a decade, and also why up to now we haven't really noticed the pattern. And we haven't noticed the pattern because usually the oppressor, as their sort of last act before they're kicked out, erases their past, redacts or destroys their records, hides the worst of what they've done. And so then when a new Florida strongman emerges, we think, especially Florida conservatives with social conservatives with a nativist bent, think, oh, finally, someone with some real solutions. Let's get them. That impulse is just so strong, and that otherwise, honestly, beautiful state that people go to vacation in all the time. That's where NASA is. They shoot rockets up and send people to the moon. It doesn't make any sense, that place. This new state with all this amazing economy, technological development, etc. On top of the hat on top of that peninsula is the most old school racist form of Southern government maybe that's ever been created, and it still has control.
Well, hey, Gersemi, I have a question real quickly, because when you're talking about this, and I actually asked I have a sister and family that live in Tampa, and they've been there since I guess early 2000s. And so, I'm always joking about Florida seems to be like where all the garbage in America kind of ends up. It just kind of like goes that way, So, but you don't I like from a marketing perspective, and I thought about this. How can you have a state that for so many years and decades thrives on tourism and hospitality, but yet treat people so badly? It's like, I don't get how do they connect that? That doesn't make any sense. I mean, all the people who work in the tourist industry and the hospitality industry are very, there's a lot of LGBT people and diverse people in those industries, and they're the people who provide the taxes, the commerce, the rent, the mortgages, and everything there. But yet you treat that population so badly. I know we did a show, 2 years ago, Gersemi, on the other
Mhm.
show, on the coffee show, about the Great Florida Brain Drain, about how they were losing so many good teachers, and they were just leaving the state because of the Moms for Liberty people and all that kind of stuff. I mean, do you have any idea of why they tolerate that? I mean, don't they have like business people to say, "Oh, this is bad for business"? I mean, I don't.
Most of the state has only been made possible post World War II with the advent of air conditioning. So if there's a section of the state that's the South of Florida that actually isn't the cultural South. That's actually, if you go down to various places, I mean, they could break Florida up like New England. Miami is like a Latin American country. You know what I mean? Key West wants to secede and has tried the Conch Republic or whatever. And then you go to the sort of the Tampa, St. Pete area. That's its own little planet too, and that's all new, respectively, in terms of settlement in the country. It's in the way that California was new, a lot of it post World War II in terms of growth as well. So when the new states started booming, that's attracted basically all the population and all the tourism and all that you're talking about mostly. Those individuals were very frustrated politically into the late 60s, to the point where, to solve the problem, the people debated different things. Should we split Florida into two states like North and South Carolina? Should we do that so that the south of the state gets its own fare, basically can benefit from all the tax revenue of everyone wanting to go to this place? And that didn't happen, obviously. And then the second thing they did was they blew up their constitution in the late 60s and started anew. And that gave them several decades, basically, of representative government. And they used to call this in Florida, and it's so funny now because it sounds like a joke, but they called it, the policy was, and the philosophy was, government and sunshine. I'm sorry, this isn't a joke. They were talking about open meetings, access to public records, and they had several decades of politicians, mostly who were coming from the south parts of the state that are the most populated, that really were bringing that representation to Tallahassee. And unfortunately, government and sunshine, the rays of light are now covered by a cloud. Like, it just doesn't exist in the same way. Something older, right, than the movement that tried to bring about basically a lot of years of tremendous growth and a lot of years of they call it a heyday, actually, of the hospitality industry, etc. All of the wonderful things that were happening. Basically, it's sort of politically ended. Now, that doesn't mean it's still not an economic heyday. It's like you go to anywhere in Florida, and it's still like in many places an amazing real estate market, etc. And then also you have weird socio-political happenings occurring, very recently, where we had a certain former president who was supposed to be disgraced, who moved down to a place called Mar-a-Lago, and then his personality completely matched with the archetype of a Tallahassee strongman, and he sort of became superpowered by the state of Florida and becoming a state of Florida resident. And then that certain breed of politics not only headed to Tallahassee, but basically created the phenomenon where the two major political centers of our country now are Washington, D.C. and Tallahassee, Florida. Florida politics basically rule. Susie Wiles, is a Floridian, like the chief of staff. There's also Marco Rubio. I mean, it's amazing the degree to which this place has planted these little poisonous seeds of a form of tyranny so deeply that they can sprout even after decades of being called back. And it's odd. I feel bad. I do most of my talks on this book in Florida, and there are so many progressive to moderate to, you know what I mean, to just not MAGA conservative individuals who are interested and open to hearing this historical message and thirsty for it, this context of their own state. And there's so many, like, you go to St. Pete, that's a gay mecca. Key West, gay mecca. Wilton Manor, Florida is like the gay villages. It's crazy there. You can't find a non-gay retiree, basically. And still, like, this large disenfranchised group in Florida, such a big state, which is basically larger than this disenfranchised group is basically larger than the entire population of Georgia. They still can't, they've still found a way that the system has to like call back their maybe, 52 to 49% of the vote, such that they have no power over where they live. And this is just the fundamental question that I still ponder on and find fascinating about this place.
I feel it, and the reason why dictator types use these tactics is because they can. And the majority of the population is not in the LGBT community, unfortunately.
Mm.
And we've talked about this on the coffee show several times, why the Hispanic community and the Black community stay polarized because they don't ever really lock arms and help each other, even though they should, is because they go, if they're going after the Black community and Black Lives Matter,
they're not coming after me. Yeah,
I'm safe.
Yeah,
and we saw this in this hardcore anti-trans movement. Other queers throwing trans people under the bus for the same reason. Hey, we're safe. We're at least it ain't me. And because you're either fighting against tyranny or you're complicit. And there's no gray area in that. And, the people of Germany found that out in the 1930s and 40s. The people of the Soviet Union found that out in the 50s with Stalin. Is the reason why these politicians and wannabe dictators do this throughout history, not just in the United States, is because you can demonize a minority or an oppressed group or an affected group like women. Even though they're the majority of the vote, they don't vote smartly. To be honest, like a lot of women are anti-feminist. Like they're. I've got family members that are misogynist women. That don't like women.
I relate to that. I have same family members of that bent,
and it's mind-boggling for people to sign away the rights from other people in the approximate same movement.
Yeah.
But they will out of fear, and fear sells. Is, don't let this happen to you. We'll change your name to an example too.
Right.
And it's a constant theme in history, and it's one of the reasons you can go back to Rome, you can go back to Greece. Whenever somebody gets it in their mind they want to be the supreme leader,
right?
They go, let me. It's almost like the prison yard rules. When you get to prison, you knock out the biggest guy there.
Well, when power offers you an assimilationist trade-off, saying make yourself a little smaller, fit our shape, and you'll be safe. All that does is that puts you in a crouch. And when you're put in a crouch, right, then that just makes it very easy for you to be stomped when they get around to it.
Yeah.
When they get around to it. This happened in the civil rights movement, believe it or not. In Florida, there were accommodationist Black folk that did not want to end segregation because they thought that this would cause so much trouble to integrate society, and they didn't want to be violently attacked legitimate because by all these radical, basically vigilante white groups that were lynching people and burning crosses and doing all sorts of crazy stuff. And so and then there were individuals that advocated for integration who basically Charlie Johns and the Johns Committee and this Florida McCarthyist fought all the way. People don't even realize this. All the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court. There was a Miami minister named Father Theodore Gibson who was basically the named plaintiff on the school desegregation lawsuit. He was trying to desegregate the Miami schools for his son in the 50s so that his kid could attend, receive an equal education. Charlie Johns wanted to jail this man. He wanted to get him in chains. He wanted to get him in prison stripes on a Florida roadside and get a picture so that every Black person in the state that even had the impulse to want freedom knew this is what happens. We'll make an example of you. What did this guy Theodore Gibson do? He fought basically for his freedom and his right basically for the NAACP to fight for their rights all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, and he won in a very close case, 5-4. He won. People don't know these things. So like history metes out that individuals who know their rights and assert them and fight for them, even in the face of physical danger, over time, right, are the ones who move our society forward the next leap. The individuals who take the assimilationist trade-off, be like, oh, okay, if I just be a little quieter, if I just look a little bit more like what your definition of a respectable person is, yakety yak, those individuals, right, are not the ones who end up truly enjoying the potential fruits of this country and our society. They end up being, they accept second-class status. And you should never, this is something I tell my students at Tulane, never make yourself smaller and accept the second-class status. Just do not. It's not a way to live. It's not a way to live.
Yep, exactly. Well, on that note, we will go ahead and wrap it up because we're right at the time. And we appreciate it, Bobby. And
now, this is very interesting. This is like up my alley. I could like listen to this all day long.
Somebody should write a book about it. Anyway, the book is called American Scare. So if you guys want to pick it up on one of the many for sale online books, is it on the audio too, or is it just?
Yeah.
Okay.
We just asked that before the show.
It is, yeah. I worked really hard to selecting the voice actor. I think this voice actor is amazing. He sounds like LeVar Burton. Like I thought was the coolest voice actor ever to read this book.
So it's a fascinating read and a fascinating story, and it applies very much to what's going on today. So that is all we have, and we will dance on out. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank
Bye,
you.
y'all. Hey, y'all. Thanks for watching Two Queers in a Truck. And it's May, y'all. And it's been a great, crazy year. Had a special guest. Super excited about it. It has a lot of relevance to what's going on in this country right now. Get educated. Go out and get this book or download it on any of your audio podcast platforms. And it's called American Scare. Don't miss out. And do a little reading or listen to it. One or the other. It won't hurt. But I appreciate y'all, and we are very appreciative of Bobby coming on to the show. And we'll see you next week. Bye, y'all.
Bye, y'all.
Hi, everybody. This is Yorense from the Espera Cash Show over here. All I'm here is doing a little quick PSA. Use this summer to do volunteer work. Go to your nearest YMCA. Go to your nearest homeless shelter. Go to whatever community services or programs that you can help out and volunteer. Because right now, we have a bunch of fascist pieces of shit trying to rip apart our country and rip apart the people, our communities, by spreading hate and bigotry. The best way to combat it is, one, working in your community and standing strong to show that you are strong and you're here to help out others. Two, combat misinformation. If you hear bullshit, first research and make sure if it's true or not. If it is not true, call it out. If it is true, get the facts. Be knowledgeable of it because it might come out later. So always stand against that. And three, fuck fascists. Stand against them. Make them feel uncomfortable. There is too many people out there feeling like they can say the hard R or say slurs or be violent. Make them understand that a lot of people die to make sure this hatred and bigotry does not exist. All our civil rights workers, all the people who restored normity, everybody who fought against intolerance and hatred, they died and worked their asses off to stop this. So follow in their footsteps and stop this madness. This is Yorense again from Espera Que, and all I can say is be there for your community and stand up for what's right. Fuck fascism and have a wonderful day.
All right, we'll just come back for about 2 minutes, and then we'll take our last break, and then we'll end the show.
Okay.
Here we go. Okay, we'll come back for just a couple minutes, and we'll end. Here we go.
Good job. Great intro. All right. Come back, talk about Epstein.
Okay.
Epstein.
I'm gonna start recording. Good job, y'all. All right, we're at the 18-minute mark. Tony, the second half, do you want to switch it to more national conversations? Because you were talking about Charlotte, or do you want to stay on Charlotte? Or edited. And once again, I know your time is valuable.
What is language like? I have a potty mouth, so let me know. Are y'all?
We don't. We don't mind. Is that right, Gersemi?
Yeah, no,
I'll try to refrain since it's the Christmas season.
Exactly.
All right. And by the way, I just want you to know this is the earliest interview I've ever done in my life.
Oh my goodness.
And this is the Jenny Award.
I'm quite honored to have a conversation with Jojo Garza. He's with the Grammy Award-winning Los Lonely Boys, and actually, I believe you're in San Angelo, Texas. Is that correct?
Yeah, man, I'm here at home right now.
Well, welcome to Que Pasa, Mr. Garza. Listen, I have to admit that I grew up in Texas. I'm from Fort Worth, Texas, a native Texan, and Tejano, I guess that's what I grew up calling myself. And there was always this confusion. Is San Angelo Central Texas or is it West Texas?
Well, you're right about that. There's always like a bit of confusion about it.
And this is the Pendejo Chronicles.